You could be a wizard or a chef or a wrestler or a painter or an engineer or anything, and it's all going to feel exactly the same. It all is the same because it's you're the one doing it, and that's what really matters. Welcome back to the RF Fitness Podcast, brought to you by rffitness.net. I almost said the RF Fitness again. Your source for online coaching built for and by busy grown-ups just like you who are on the quest for health and strength in everyday life. I am your host, Rob Finlayson, certified older brother, fitness coach, and gorilla apologist, here with no co-host today. Another ranter with no banter, guys. All right, so I do have a whole miniature script that I want to get through, but first of all, I need to address this ongoing I would say catastrophic debate that's happening in the online space right now that I have been asked about a dozen times by different people, and that is 100 men versus one gorilla in a fight, I assume to the death. Who would win? Obviously, it's the gorilla. It's not even close. Those 100 men are dead men walking. And I don't think it matters if one of them is Shaq and so many of them are the Chicago Bulls, or if Andre the Giant is there. Andre the Giant is dead, first of all. He doesn't count. There are many live gorillas for us to choose from, but I don't think we're allowed to pick a dead human being in this. Also, how are they fighting? Some people, I think it seems like they're assuming it comes in like waves, like the men are attacking. I'm thinking this is men specifically. I haven't seen anyone say the women are on this. That tracks, to be honest. That makes sense for a lot of reasons. But some people are saying like it's like a one-on-one 100 times. I was sort of assuming it's just like 100 men just jump into the gorilla enclosure all at the same time, and it's kind of a free-for-all at that point. No matter what the rules of engagement here are, I think the results are the same, and it's that the gorilla rips these men's bodies apart and probably uses pieces of them to beat the other men to death. Because I think a lot of people don't understand how breakable the human body really is compared to other animals. Like, we are, as a species, we are pretty delicate compared to a lot of other especially primates, especially gorillas. Male silverback gorillas, the one in the argument that I've been seeing. And as someone who's studied both martial arts and primates, it's part of my background. Yeah, I can tell you, you got nothing. You got nothing, dude. I'm gonna say in a one-on-one fight. We're doing a fist fight here too, by the way. This is 100 unarmed men. Homo sapiens have no natural defenses. We evolved our way out of them. Our natural defenses are brain, our ability to make tools and work together and build airplanes and refrigerators so that we don't have to deal with gorillas ever again. So we can put them into cages because we have guns, you guys. Take that away, and you got a dead guy. And a gorilla is, of course, a gorilla is almost an obligate herbivore. They're not going to eat men because they don't eat anything bigger than probably like lizards, I want to say. They eat mostly leaves. It's a lot of leaves, guys, and they don't just eat bananas. That's a harmful stereotype. That's a gross misrepresentation of their dietary habits. But I digress. Have you seen the teeth on these guys? Like, they eat meat sometimes with the size of their freaking canines, dude. Anyways, if you want those sinking into your shoulder and just like absolutely shattering your collarbone while they rip you in two, while they just unzip you like a jacket, like a windbreaker, and you're man number 48, and you just watched Shaq get split like a board by a gorilla who's barely trying. No thanks. I'm getting out. Anyways, I wanted to talk today about a subject that came up very briefly. Sorry, this is super duper tangential if you can't tell already. It came up very briefly in my episode with Colin, my interview with Colin last week. Thank you, Colin. Shout out to having a great guest on. And we talked a little bit about how I had done this little series a while back about how D&D and fitness are essentially the same thing. And that was like kind of a joke, kind of like a clickbaity way to put it. But it was like a whole thought essay basically that I had. And I do want to give that idea its own episode because I think there's a lot more to dig into there. But I also have been thinking a lot about like that sort of the base, the foundational argument of that statement that D&D and fitness are the same thing, and how it relates to other base foundational comparisons that I've made before in the past, namely that the culinary arts and the martial arts are spiritually identical. Mo and I started watching season 3 of The Bear finally, like last week, and I think it's episode 1 or 2. I think it's episode 1, where it's just like a several like different timelines of Carmi, the main character, Carmen, and his sort of like history in the culinary arts, like what his career has been. And there's a lot of footage of him like chopping stuff and collecting things out of the garden and pulling things out of the dirt and then cleaning dishes and then more chopping and more sauce and more pulling and chopping and saucing and pulling and chopping and saucing and pulling and so on and so forth. And I mentioned to Mo, which I have a tendency to do during television shows, to just come up and talk about things when it strikes my brain, which I'm sure she loves. Sorry, babe. That martial arts and cooking in that way are very, very similar because there's like this bell curve of the bell curve of expertise, I think is what I came up with in the moment. Where like at the beginning, at the bottom, you're doing these incredibly basic, foundational, almost rote actions because you don't know what you're doing. And you have to learn the absolute basics of whatever skill set you're doing, if it's cooking or fighting. And then the middle, there's all this like fancy stuff you put on top of it, new techniques and new ways of thinking and new ways of moving and ways to explore and push boundaries and create brand new forms of thinking of art, right? That's what makes these things art, a martial art or culinary art. And then at the other end of the bell curve, it falls back down and you're back to doing these very foundational things, pulling things by hand out of a garden, pulling individual flower petals off of a plant so that you can get like this very specific type of thing, which is a type of task you would send like an intern basically to do because it's so rote, or the absolute master of their craft is doing this themselves personally because these are the things that matter the most. They are foundational, basic skills for a reason. There is a good reason the first things you learn is how to grip a lapel, is how to apply closed guard, is how to throw a jab cross, is how to rotate your hips. There's a reason these are the first things you learn in a martial art, because once you get all that once you have all those fancy techniques, all the more advanced stuff, all the different ways, once you are able to apply your will on top of everything else, you're able to then strip away so much unnecessary things to like hone to like a diamond point your field, to become on the far end of that bell curve of expertise. And in that episode of The Bear, I think I'll say it's episode 1, there's the chef in, I think it's New York, that Carmi works under for a while, played by Joel McHale, who's an asshole. That's his whole character, is that he's like literally this nightmare mentor who literally haunts Carmi's dreams. But he, berates him for some stupid, minuscule thing. And then he writes on a piece of tape and tapes it on the table, subtract. And he says, subtract. That's how you become great. That's how you get greatness. And that actually reminded me of another martial arts quote of someone who said, "It is not the daily increase, but the daily decrease. Hack away at the unessential. The closer to the source, the less wastage there is." And that is a quote by Bruce Lee. So that name carries a lot of weight for me. I actually used to, in college, high school and college, I want to say, I had written a number of Bruce Lee quotes on a piece of paper, and I taped it next to my bedroom door by the light switch. So every single day, multiple times a day, as I walked out or did anything, that page of quotes would be one of the last things I see and like think about. And like, so that was on there, hack away at the unessential. And of course, the quote about, be water, adapt to your surroundings, become whatever you need to be in the moment in the vessel. And the other one that sticks in my mind was, as you think, so shall you become. Just like talking about, the power of thought, the power of personality. But anyways, why digress yet again? What I really wanted to talk about this week, of course, is not necessarily I don't want to talk about the tree. I want to talk about the forest here, right? It's not that Dungeons and Dragons and fitness are the same. It's not that martial arts and cooking are the same. It's that how you do anything is how you do everything. And that relates to fitness, obviously. That relates to any sort of creative endeavor, to Dungeons and Dragons or your culinary arts. That relates to your professional life, to your job. It relates to your relationships with your spouse, your friends, with your kid, being a parent. It's all the same thing. And I think I've said this before many times in the podcast, and I know I'm going to say it some more. It's all the same thing. It all is the same because the same person is doing it. It's you. You are the common denominator in every experience you'll ever have in your entire life. Is you are the one having that experience. And that is a really important, I think, and powerful realization to have and to take advantage of. And it can be really hard for the same reason it's hard to tell a fish that it's been in water for its entire life. It's that's just how it is. You don't really think about it. You're like, how do you tell a fish it's wet? Although I guess you can make the argument that water isn't wet. Water makes things wet. That's a whole that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other conversation. So we won't do that right now. I've been feeling very philosophical lately, you guys. I'm sorry. But you need to realize and understand your own habits and patterns. And that takes a great deal of, one, emotional maturity, which, hey, if you look around, there's not exactly an excess of that going around. You have to be willing to accept and understand unattractive aspects of yourself so that you can identify and change them. And I don't mean accept unattractive aspects of yourself like, oh, I have cellulite, or, oh, I don't like that I have to lose 11 pounds around my midsection. I mean, unattractive things like, I have this implicit bias in my head. Like, maybe that is a little bit racist that I always think this way, or maybe I do have a shorter temper than I tell myself I do. This is something I deal with. And I think there's a lot of ways to go about this. And I have found, because of my background in philosophy, that asking yourself why and answering really honestly is so powerful and important and often uncomfortable to the point of being painful. Like, as an example, if I lose my temper with the kid, if I yell at Olivia, it's very rare. I hate doing it. It feels bad. It feels yucky to do. But occasionally I will snap. Everyone who's got a kid has snapped on their kid for whatever reason. And she's 6 now, so she's able to better sort of like, I don't want to say accept it, but there's a routine to it. There's a pattern here to think. Again, if you have a kid, you know what I'm talking about. And in the interim between like the snap and us basically making up and talking about it, I have to ask myself why. Why did I snap? Why did I get so upset about this thing? Why did I react the way that I did? Why did I say those words in that tone to the kid about this thing? Why? Well, because I'm frustrated. Why are you frustrated? Well, because she's not listening to what I'm telling her. Okay, why isn't she listening? Why is it important to you that she listens to what you're telling her? Well, because I only want what's best for her, and because I love her, and because I'm worried about her. Okay, why are you worried about her? Well, because I see a lot of myself in her. I have ADHD. I can see that she's going to be struggling with a lot of the same things that I was struggling with. We've had this conversation again on the pod several times. And what it boils down to is that like I'm like seeing her act a certain way makes me feel afraid, because one, I'm afraid for the struggles that she'll face down the line if she doesn't act a certain way, or build these habits, whatever. And two, because I think it just triggers something in myself. It triggers something in yourself where like you see that thing, you understand what's coming down the line, you can foresee those struggles, that pain, and it makes you relive that pain on like a deep, like cellular level, basically. Like not like physically, maybe physically cellular, I don't know, biologically, but more like deep down in your lizard brain. Like you remember when your parent yelled at you about that, or you remember when you failed your test because X, Y, Z, and that's why you're snapping at your kid right now, because you felt that pain. And it's like somewhere in your brain it says that kid is making me relive this pain, and that makes you mad. But you're not mad. You're scared for that kid because you love them so much. And then you got to sort of climb out of that hole a little bit while you stand in the kitchen and doom scroll on your phone or sip your tea or whatever. And then you can go into her room and say, hey, kid, listen, I want to talk about how I snapped at you. I'm sorry. I've probably years ago, there was some time when I snapped on her real hard, and it was not great. And I felt really bad about it. And then it was bad enough that Mo took her and the dog on a walk. And I just kind of sat at home. I had to ask myself these questions and think about it. And then we got back in. I talked to Olivia. She might have been 4.5, 5 or so. She wasn't in school yet. But I told her, like, hey, listen, like the way I spoke to you was not okay. And I apologize. And I love you very much. And I want you to know that I don't, like, the way I made you feel isn't the way I feel about you. The way I spoke to you and the way I made you feel, no one's allowed to talk to you that way. Not even me, especially not me. Like, don't accept feeling that way from anyone else, especially not from your dad, because that's not what I want to do. That's not the relationship I want us to have. And that took a lot, a lot of very heavy emotional lifting, of mental lifting, but it was worth it because it means that one, our relationship is that much stronger for it. And two, because like I said, how you do anything is how you do everything. So the way I do many things is with maybe an oversized amount of self-reflection. Like I said, I've been feeling philosophical about it. But the point of that is so that you are able to realize and understand these unattractive, like I said, these unattractive aspects of your own character, so that you can identify and change them if you need to, or so that you can identify your strengths and play to that. I've talked about this in many episodes early on, especially like let's lean in. That's something I talk about with my clients a lot. In every week with my questies, they get an email with a number of questions about it as I do my questie check-in. And one of them is, what can we lean into? What's working? What do we do more of in order to succeed better? And there's another question too, like what can we remove, subtract, or step away from to make life a little bit better? Because it's not about only adding things in, it's also about taking things away. And I don't mean taking out carbs. I mean adding in more vegetables and fruits. So there's a little bit of a balance here, guys. There's a push and a pull. And so what am I talking about here? I'm talking about like identifying your own personality, basically. Knowing what tools you have to do a job is going to make doing that job go a lot smoother. If I need to build a house, I need to know what kind of tools I have. If I'm making dinner, I need to know what ingredients are available. I need to know what dishes are clean, So there's a lot of these personality types and personality tests and stuff like that out there, and most of them are pretty bunko, as fun as they are. Looking at you, horoscopes. Sorry to my astro girlies. Looking at you, Myers-Briggs. Sorry to my corporate bros, my corporate girlies. The girlies. I think the I mean, and sorry to all my BuzzFeed personality type quizzes. Knowing what type of dog in a hat you are isn't going to help you establish a stronger relationship with your child. I mean, probably. I don't know. I haven't taken a what kind of dog in a hat are you quiz from BuzzFeed in many years. Maybe it's worth revisiting. But I will say the personality type quiz, test, finder, the ones that I have found are actually valuable and most importantly accurate is the book Strengths Finder and Strengths Finder 2.0. I did that as part of a professional development course um, close to 10 years ago. And it was actually very eye-opening and helped me to kind of cultivate how I do things. The other one is the Big Five personality traits, and this is something that's come up, I think, a little bit more recently in some psychology and like, but at this point, pop psychology circles. It's basically that there are five main personality traits types, and those are openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, not extroversion, but extraversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. And I don't know exactly what all five of those things entail. Most of them I think are fairly open-ended, like, or fairly, on face value, like neuroticism and openness feel like they mean what you think they mean, but I took the test right before I started recording here. It's a little quiz. It took me like 6 minutes online for free. I went to truity.com/test/big five personality test. I will link this in the show notes so that you can take it yourself. I got a free version of the test, which is what the link goes to. Obviously, you can pay the money and get a more detailed readout of your thing, which if it's the kind of thing that you're really looking to cultivate and learn more about yourself, I'd say it's probably worthwhile if you have other people who talk about it with, not just this thing. Talk about it with a human being. Talk about it with me. That'd be great. I would love to talk about this kind of stuff. But you do get results for free that give you some numbers. So I took the test, and because you're curious, because I was, my scores are thus, and it's out of 100. My openness score is 96 out of 100. Quite open, which is accurate. And these are generated from answers to questions that I did. My conscientiousness is a 67, which is lower than I thought maybe, but maybe I'm not understanding what conscientiousness really means. Extraversion, 67% again. My agreeableness, 79, pretty high, my second highest rate, that makes sense. And neuroticism is a scant 44, so pretty low. I am not a very neurotic person, surprise. And then they tell you that there's four main like personality, God, what do they call it? It's not personality types. It's your personality pattern. Your personality traits interact to create unique patterns of thought and behavior. In this section, you'll learn how your traits create key synergies that drive the way you think and live. And I am far and away at 87.5% an empathetic idealist. So says the test. The empathetic idealist uses insight and creativity to help others. That makes a lot of sense. The second highest one is 42. And again, the empathetic idealist was 87.5. So that's way behind at second place, was practical caretaker. The practical caretaker helps other people in practical everyday ways, which again, that makes sense. So pretty cool, interesting stuff. But how this relates to fitness, to jobs, to relationships, to any creative endeavor, like I said, I've said it a million, probably the name of the episode, how you do anything is how you do everything, because you're the one doing it. And there's only one way you can do things. I mean, on a long term, and so that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Like, to relate back to the original statement, Dungeons and Dragons is like fitness. In D&D, you play a certain class, a wizard or a fighter or a thief, whatever. All of these classes have specific strengths, things they're very good at, things they are uniquely positioned to be able to do, and things that they're not very good at. A wizard isn't going to be good at fighting face to face. The warrior or the barbarian isn't going to be very good at investigating arcane history. That's just not what you're. But it's like the fish climbing a tree thing. If you only mark success by one standardized thing, then if you never ask the monkey to swim, you know what I mean. So whatever, you know the meme. You've seen the meme. I digress. So to relate this to fitness, one of the things I mentioned in my little series from a while ago about D&D and fitness is that there is I think cognitive dissonance sometimes from people who want to get into one or both things, D&D or working out, and then finding out that they don't like it or that they have a negative experience. And that cognitive dissonance comes from there's a big community attitude. I feel like this thing is for everyone. Fitness is for everyone. Dungeons and Dragons is for everyone. And I don't think that's necessarily tautologically correct. It's not a true truth. I think anyone can do fitness, anyone can do D&D, but it's not necessarily going to be for everyone. Mo has played Dungeons and Dragons, doesn't like it. It's not really for her, and I can see why. She loves games. She likes things with fantasy. We watched Game of Thrones, all that stuff. So it's not like she's turned off by like, ooh, nerds or whatever. It's just that she, for her gaming experience or social experience, I think would rather have a social experience or a mathematical gaming experience. And D&D is sort of this mash of both, and that's just not what she wants to do. And that's fair and fine. For fitness, boy howdy, there's a bazillion different kinds of fitness. So it's almost too vague to say that fitness is for everyone because there's so many different ways to do that, And like Dungeons and Dragons, you have a certain skill set, or like your culinary arts, you have certain tastes, or like a martial arts, you have certain inherent traits and skill sets that make you predisposed to following a certain pattern. And fitness, follow those. Do that. If you're not someone who is built to have a naturally thin waist, broad shoulders, muscular legs, maybe bodybuilding style training isn't going to be for you. If you're someone who is long, tall, long femurs, long arms, gracile, we would say, built skinny is another way to say, maybe strongman sports aren't for you. Maybe you could try swimming or distance running, basketball. I don't know, I'm someone who's of very medium size and very medium build, so I can be pretty medium at most athletic endeavors that I do. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people out there because that's why it's medium. It's kind of right in the middle. So it's more a matter of like, what does my brain and personality type and character really like get excited by? And for me, that's martial arts. That's my fitness. And that's like the way I pursue martial arts. I'm a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, and I've been there for over a year with no stripes. Just saying. I don't think anyone who listens to this does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu either, so whatever. But I've been thinking a lot about how I do my Jiu-Jitsu because I've been going through this phase recently, whatever, where I feel like I've forgotten more Jiu-Jitsu than I actually know anymore. I feel like I'm just getting worse at it. So I'm thinking more about how I do things. I'm asking myself why. Why do I do this? Why do I make these mistakes? Why do I go for this sort of thing? And what I'm landing on is that I'm an experimenter. I want to try new things, try unexpected things, see what happens, and move from there, rather than a lot of people who do jiu-jitsu and are very, very successful at it are really like systems minded, where it's like a flow chart in their brain and their body can follow along that flow chart in real time of this happens, they do that, then I do this so that they do that, and then I do this to make them do that, and then I get what I want. My brain doesn't work like that. It's just like, try this, try this, try this, try this. There's an opening, go. Which is kind of how I play Dungeons and Dragons, and it's sort of how I have been running my coaching business, but I'm getting better at that by saying, here's what I'm really good at. I'm going to lean into this. Getting to know people is what I'm good at. Being client first in my coaching. Having a high degree of openness and conscientiousness, apparently, is what I'm very good at. And so when I pursue my profession of coaching, which I see more as a profession or an art than a job, which is, again, how I do everything. I see many of these things as arts, as creative endeavors. I want to do it to the best of my ability, not to the best of the ability of whoever says what makes a good coach. The only person who gets to say if you're a good coach or not really is your client. The end. And my clients have said that I'm a good coach, so I know that I am. I've also had other coaches tell me that, and directors and managers tell me that. So that's how I know. I don't have imposter syndrome anymore. I am the person who causes imposter syndrome in others. That's me. You're the imposter, fool. But anyways, I guess that's another thing I wanted to crack down, to drill in on really quick about how I approach everything, especially like Dungeons and Dragons, because I love to talk about that. Is that for me, it's not. I mean, it is a game and it is fun, but for me, it's not. It's not just a game. It's not just a game. It's not just a game. It is a form of self-expression to me. It is an art form. It is a craft to get better at. And the medium of this art is other people, is the experiences that you have with your friends and your players. And I want to hone that art. I want to get better at that ability. It's how I express myself. Just one of many ways. I guess that's my lesson here, is everything you do is self-expression. I think there's probably a lot of people who would say I'm no artist, that they don't have a creative bone in their body. I'm not a good drawer. I could never paint. I could never make music. How could I be a creative? How could I be an artist? I would argue everything you do is a form of self-expression. And in that way, it becomes art. And that can be beautiful. And oftentimes it can be painful. The creative process, when it's working, is not always comfortable. I think that's by design. It has to be a little bit uncomfortable in order for it to work. Because otherwise you're not growing. You're not, true expression is a growth experience. Well, we'll leave it with that. This has been the RF Fitness Podcast. Yes, I'm available for online coaching and extremely limitedly in-person, in-home coaching. I'm also now, again, training in person at the New Hope YMCA. So if you're one of my OG fans, you can find me there again. Reach out. Or if you want to find out if my coaching online is right for you, you can head to rffitness.net. That's rffitness.net, and then scroll all the way to the bottom of that green page to see what kind of coaching I offer. You can do the client application for free. Schedule yourself a call with me. Ooh, I need to change my Calendly availability to reflect my new work schedule. And you can also hit join the party, the Discord button on there to jump into our Discord community server for free. Our theme music is Funk AF by Everett Ullman, distributed by YouTube Studios. Thanks for listening, and new as always, touch iron, roll dice, and keep questing.